Black woman was wrongly accused. A wealthy lawyer helped her prove her innocence. In the process, they discovered a deep love. The scream echoed through the halls of the Whitaker mansion, shattering the peace of the Sunday morning in Beacon Hill, Boston. Amelia Cooper, a 28-year-old with ebony skin and determined eyes, froze in the middle of the hallway, the pile of freshly laundered towels slipping out of her trembling arms. "Thief! Thief in my house!" Eleanor Whitaker's shrill voice reverberated again, this time accompanied by the sound of hurried footsteps descending the marble staircase. Amelia's heart raced. She had worked for the Whitakers for almost 5 years, always with dedication and honesty. What could have happened? Before she could process the situation, Eleanor Whitaker appeared at the top of the stairs, her normally well-composed face contorted into a mask of fury and accusation. Her blue eyes pierced Amelia like daggers of ice. "You!" Eleanor pointed a trembling finger at Amelia. "How dare you? After all we've done for you." Amelia felt the blood freeze in her veins. "Mrs. Whitaker, I don't understand. What happened?" "Don't play the fool." Eleanor came down the stairs, brandishing something in her hand. It was a diamond necklace, her most precious jewel. "I found this hidden among your things. Did you think you could steal it from me and get away with it?" The accusation hit Amelia like a punch in the gut. "No, ma'am. I would never—" There must be some mistake. But Eleanor wasn't listening. Her face grew redder and redder as she screamed for her husband and the security guard. In a matter of minutes, Amelia found herself surrounded, accusing looks coming from all sides. "I didn't steal anything," Amelia insisted, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Please, you have to believe me." Mr. Whitaker, a burly man with a neatly trimmed mustache, looked at Amelia with a mixture of disappointment and anger. "Amelia, we thought you were different. How could you betray our trust like that?" His words hurt her deeply. Amelia had always prided herself on her hard work and integrity. Now, everything was falling apart around her because of a false accusation. "Call the police!" Eleanor demanded, her voice shaking with indignation. Panic gripped Amelia. A conviction for theft would ruin her life, destroy everything she had fought so hard for. "Please," she begged, looking from one face to another, searching for a glimmer of understanding or compassion. "I'm innocent. There has to be another explanation." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The security guard was already on the phone, calling the authorities. Amelia felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. How could this be happening? While they waited for the police to arrive, Amelia was escorted into the kitchen, away from the accusing stares of the Whitaker family. Sitting on a hard wooden chair, she tried to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. Her mind raced, going over the events of the last few days, trying to find some explanation for what was happening. 20 minutes later, which seemed like an eternity, the police sirens broke the tense silence. Amelia felt her heart sink even further. The reality of the situation hit her full force. She was about to be arrested for a crime she didn't commit. The policemen entered the kitchen, their faces serious and professional. "Miss Cooper," one of them asked, consulting a notepad. "We need you to come with us to answer a few questions." Amelia nodded silently, getting up on shaky legs. As she was led out of the house, she passed the living room, where the Whitakers were gathered. Eleanor stared at her with a look of triumph, while Mr. Whitaker looked more tired than angry. It was at this moment that Amelia spotted Olivia, the Whitakers' teenage daughter, standing in the corner of the room. Their eyes met briefly, and Amelia was surprised to see an expression of guilt and fear on the girl's face. Before she could think any more about it, she was led away, towards the police car that was waiting for her. As she was placed in the back of the car, Amelia looked at the Whitaker mansion one last time. 5 years of hard work, of building a life for herself. Everything seemed to be falling apart in a matter of minutes. But amidst the despair, a tiny spark of determination ignited within her. She was innocent, and somehow she would find a way to prove it. The police car drove off, taking Amelia towards an uncertain future. As the familiar streets of Beacon Hill passed by her window, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She would need all her strength and courage to face what lay ahead. At the police station, Amelia was subjected to hours of relentless questioning. The detectives pressed her with questions, trying to find holes in her story. But she stood firm, repeating her innocence over and over again. "Miss Cooper," said Detective Johnson, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, "understand that your situation is serious. We have the Whitakers' testimony and the physical evidence of the necklace found among your belongings. If you cooperate now, confess and show repentance, it could help your case." Amelia looked directly into the detective's eyes, her voice firm despite the fear she felt. "Detective, I understand that things look bad for me, but I can't confess to something I didn't do. I've worked hard all my life to build a reputation for honesty. I'm not going to throw it away with a lie, even if it seems like the easy way out right now." The detective studied her for a long moment, as if trying to decipher whether she was telling the truth. Finally, he sighed. "Very well, Miss Cooper. For the time being, you will be detained while we continue our investigation. You are entitled to one phone call. I suggest you use it to contact a lawyer." Amelia nodded, feeling a knot forming in her throat. When she was taken back to her temporary cell, the reality of her situation hit her full force. She was alone, accused of a crime she didn't commit, with no idea how to prove her innocence. Sitting on the hard bench in her cell, Amelia closed her eyes and tried to calm down. Who could she call? Her family was far away, in Chicago, and she didn't have many close friends in Boston. Most of her savings were earmarked for helping her sick mother. There would be no way to afford a good lawyer. While contemplating her limited options, Amelia heard voices in the hallway. Opening her eyes, she saw a man being led to a nearby cell. He was tall, with gray hair at his temples, and a suit that, even if creased, screamed money. "This is an outrage," the man protested. "Don't you have any idea who I am?" The policeman escorting him seemed impassive. "Mr. Callahan, you were caught drunk driving. You'll spend the night here to calm down. Your lawyer has already been contacted." Amelia watched the scene with a mixture of fascination and despair. Here was a man who clearly had resources, connections, everything she didn't have at the moment. As the policeman walked away, the man, Callahan, noticed Amelia watching him. "What is it?" he asked, his voice still charged with indignation. "Haven't you ever seen someone wrongly imprisoned before?" Something in those words touched Amelia. Before she could stop herself, she replied, "Actually, sir, I'm in exactly the same situation." Callahan looked at her more closely, his anger giving way to curiosity. "Are you? And what's your story?" Hesitant at first, but driven by the need to get things off her chest, Amelia began to tell her story. As she spoke, she noticed that Callahan was listening with growing interest. "Let me get this straight," he said when she had finished. "You've worked honestly for years, never been in trouble with the law, and suddenly you're accused of stealing a valuable jewel that magically appeared among your things." Amelia nodded, feeling tears forming in her eyes. "Exactly, and now I'm here, with no idea how to prove my innocence." Callahan was silent for a moment, seeming to ponder something. Finally, he spoke. "You know, Miss Cooper, I'm a lawyer. In fact, I'm one of the best criminal lawyers in Boston. And your story, well, it intrigues me." Amelia's heart raced. "Mr. Callahan, I can't afford a lawyer like you." He waved his hand in dismissal. "Money is no object. What interests me is justice. And frankly, I'd love the chance to rub the truth in the faces of these arrogant Whitakers." For the first time since the nightmare began, Amelia felt a spark of hope. Would you really help me?" Callahan smiled, a smile that mixed confidence with a touch of defiance. "Miss Cooper, it would be my pleasure. As soon as you leave here tomorrow, I'll make your case my #1 priority. We're going to prove your innocence and find out who's really behind this." At that moment, something changed in the air of the cold cell. An unlikely alliance had formed, one that would not only seek justice, but also change the lives of Amelia Cooper and Alexander Callahan forever. As the night wore on, Amelia and Alexander continued to talk, strategize, and share details of their lives. Despite the unusual circumstances of their meeting, a connection was beginning to form between them, a connection based on mutual respect and a shared determination to uncover the truth. The morning came slowly for Amelia Cooper. She had barely slept, her mind a whirlwind of worries and newborn hopes. The metallic sound of the bar's opening brought her back to reality. "Cooper, your lawyer is here," a policeman announced, his tone surprisingly respectful. Amelia stood up, straightening her crumpled clothes as best she could. As she left the cell, her eyes found Alexander Callahan. He was impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, with no sign of the night spent in detention. "Good morning, Miss Cooper," Alexander greeted her with a confident smile. "Ready to begin?" Amelia nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. "More than ready, Mr. Callahan." They were led into an empty interrogation room. As soon as the door closed behind them, Alexander changed his posture, becoming more serious and focused. "Right, Amelia. Can I call you Amelia? Let's go over everything from the beginning. We need to build up your defense and, more importantly, find out who really put that necklace among your things." For the next 90 minutes, Amelia detailed every aspect of her life over the last few months. Alexander listened attentively, taking occasional notes and interrupting with insightful questions. "You mentioned the Whitakers. Daughter Olivia," Alexander said, frowning. "You said she looked guilty when you were taken away. Can you tell me more about her?" Amelia hesitated. "Olivia's always been a sweet girl, but lately, she's been hanging out with a new group at school. Older boys, the kind her parents wouldn't approve of." Alexander leaned forward, his eyes shining with interest. "And do the Whitakers know about this?" "I'm not sure," Amelia replied. "Mrs. Whitaker is quite strict. Olivia's been hiding a lot from her." "Interesting," Alexander murmured. "Very interesting." He stood up abruptly, walking across the small room. "Amelia, I think we have an angle here. I can't promise anything yet, but I have a theory about what might have happened." Amelia's heart raced. "What?" Alexander smiled, a smile that mixed confidence and a touch of mischief. "Let's just say that teenagers can do stupid things when they feel under pressure. But first, we need to get you out of here." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Alexander moved through the corridors of the police station with the familiarity of someone who knew the system well. He argued, negotiated, and occasionally bullied his way to Amelia's parole. When they finally stepped out into the Boston sunshine, Amelia felt as if she could breathe for the first time in days. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Callahan." "Alexander, please," he insisted. "And don't thank me yet. Our work has only just begun." He guided her to a luxury car parked nearby. "Let's go to my office. We have a lot to plan." Alexander's office was in an elegant building in Boston's financial center. The sign on the door read Callahan Associates, and Amelia couldn't help but feel intimidated as she entered. Alexander led her straight into his private room, a spacious area with a panoramic view of the city. "Have a seat, please," he said, indicating a comfortable leather armchair. As Alexander moved around the room, preparing coffee for them both, Amelia couldn't help but notice how different he seemed here. More relaxed, more in his element. "So," he said, handing Amelia a cup and taking a seat behind his desk, "let's map out our strategy." For the next few hours, they discussed every detail of the case. Alexander explained the legal aspects, while Amelia provided insights into the dynamics of the Whitaker family. As they worked, Amelia found herself increasingly impressed by Alexander's intelligence and dedication. "You know," Alexander said at one point, leaning back in his chair, "there's something about this case that intrigues me beyond the legal aspect." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Alexander studied her for a moment before answering. "You, Amelia, your strength, your integrity. It's not every day that I meet someone so determined to prove their innocence, even in the face of such unfavorable odds." Amelia felt her cheeks heat up under Alexander's intense gaze. Thank you. But it's the truth. I can't accept being condemned for something I didn't do." A soft smile appeared on Alexander's face. "And that's why we're going to win this case," together. At that moment, something changed between them. It wasn't anything explicit, just a subtle change in the atmosphere, a deeper connection forming. The sound of a knock on the door broke the moment. Alexander's secretary entered, carrying a stack of documents. "Mr. Callahan, here are the records you requested on the Whitaker family." "Thank you, Jennifer," Alexander said, quickly returning to professional mode. "Please cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. This case is our top priority right now." As Jennifer left, Alexander turned to Amelia with a determined smile. "Let's get to work. We have an innocence to prove." As the afternoon progressed, Amelia and Alexander immersed themselves in the documents, looking for any clue that might help the case. The familiarity between them grew with each passing moment, a partnership forming in the search for the truth. At one point, while examining some papers, Amelia noticed Alexander watching her with a pensive expression. "Something wrong?" she asked, feeling a little self-conscious. Alexander shook his head, smiling softly. "Nothing wrong. I was just thinking. You really are extraordinary, Amelia. Most people would have crumbled under that pressure, but you're fighting." Amelia felt her heart race at the unexpected compliment. Thank you, Alexander. But I couldn't have done it without you." Their gazes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to disappear around them. It was Alexander who finally broke the silence, sniffling softly. "Well, I think we've made good progress today. How about we call it a day and come back tomorrow with renewed energy?" Amelia agreed, realizing for the first time how tired she was. As she stood up to leave, Alexander gently stopped her. "Amelia, I know your current situation is complicated. If you need a place to stay, I have a guest apartment that I rarely use. It's at your disposal for as long as you need it." The offer took Amelia by surprise. It was more than she could have expected, especially from someone she barely knew. "Alexander, I don't know what to say. That's very generous of you." He smiled, a smile that warmed Amelia inside. "It's the least I can do. After all, we're in this together now." As they left the office together, Amelia felt a mixture of emotions: gratitude, hope, and something else, something she wasn't yet ready to name. What had begun as the worst day of her life had turned into the start of something new and unexpected. As the sun set over Boston, Amelia and Alexander walked side by side, discussing the next steps in the case. Despite the circumstances that brought them together, there was a sense of optimism in the air. Together, they would face whatever came their way. Alexander's guest apartment was more luxurious than anywhere Amelia had ever lived. Located in the heart of Back Bay, overlooking the Charles River, the space was a perfect blend of elegance and comfort. As she settled in for the first night, Amelia couldn't help but reflect on how drastically her life had changed in just 48 hours. The morning brought a new determination. Amelia woke up early, made herself a strong coffee, and reviewed her notes from the previous day. At 8:30, the doorbell rang. It was Alexander, impeccably dressed as always, carrying a briefcase and a paper bag. "Good morning, Amelia," he smiled, entering the apartment. "I've brought bagels. I thought we could have breakfast while we plan our day." Sitting at the kitchen table, enjoying the bagels and coffee, they began to plot their strategy. "I've been thinking," Alexander began, buttering his bagel. "We need to talk to Olivia Whitaker. Her reaction when you were arrested is our best lead yet." Amelia nodded, remembering the guilty look on the teenager's face. "But how are we going to do that?" "I'm sure the Whitakers won't let me near her," Alexander smiled, a glint of cunning in his eyes. "Leave that to me. I have some contacts at Olivia's school. We can arrange a chance meeting after school." They spent the morning refining their plan. Alexander made several phone calls, pulling strings and making arrangements. Amelia was impressed by his efficiency and the extent of his network. Around midday, Alexander received a call that made his face turn serious. "I see. Yes, we'll be there." He hung up and turned to Amelia. "Change of plans. The police have found new evidence. They want to question us again." Amelia's heart raced. "New evidence? Is that good or bad?" "I don't know," Alexander admitted, But don't worry, I'll be by your side the whole time." At the police station, they were met by Detective Johnson, the same man who had initially questioned Amelia. His face was impassive as he led them into an interrogation room. "Miss Cooper, Mr. Callahan," he began, taking a seat in front of them. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We've had some interesting developments in the case." Alexander leaned forward, his posture professional. "What kind of developments, Detective?" Johnson opened a folder in front of him. "Well, for a start, the fingerprints on the necklace. They don't match Miss Cooper's." Amelia felt a wave of relief, but Alexander remained cautious. "And whose are they?" "That's the interesting thing," Johnson continued. "They partially match those of Olivia Whitaker, but we also have unidentified partial prints." Alexander and Amelia exchanged glances. This confirmed their suspicions about Olivia, but also raised new questions. "There's more," Johnson added. "We reviewed the security cameras in the neighborhood. We found images of Olivia meeting an unknown man the night before the alleged robbery." Amelia felt her head spin with the new information. Alexander, on the other hand, seemed more excited than ever. "Detective," he said, leaning forward, "this clearly casts significant doubt on my client's guilt. I suggest you immediately reconsider the charges against her." Johnson sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Mr. Callahan, I see your point. But we still have the Whitakers' testimony and the fact that the necklace was found among Miss Cooper's belongings." "Circumstantial evidence at best," Alexander countered. "And now we have hard evidence pointing in another direction." The discussion continued for another hour, with Alexander skillfully rebutting each of the detectives' arguments. Amelia watched, impressed by her lawyer's eloquence and determination. Finally, Johnson gave in. "Very well. We won't drop the charges yet, but I agree to expand the investigation. Miss Cooper, you're free to go, but remain at your disposal." Leaving the police station, Amelia could barely contain her emotion. "Alexander, you were amazing in there." He smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "Thank you, Amelia. But our fight is far from over. Now, more than ever, we need to talk to Olivia." Back in the car, Alexander made a quick phone call. After a brief conversation, he turned to Amelia. "I've got it. Olivia will be in the park near her school in an hour. It's our chance." As they drove to the agreed location, Amelia felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. She was about to confront the girl who could be the key to her freedom. The park was quiet when they arrived. Sitting on a bench, looking nervous and out of place, was Olivia Whitaker. When she saw Amelia and Alexander approaching, her eyes widened in recognition and fear. "Olivia," Amelia said softly, taking a seat next to her. "We need to talk." The girl seemed on the verge of tears. "Amelia, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." Alexander knelt down in front of them, his voice gentle but firm. "Olivia, we know you're involved in this, but we also believe that you didn't act alone. Please tell us what really happened." The words came out of Olivia in an emotional torrent. She talked about pressure at school, about an older boyfriend who convinced her to take her mother's necklace to impress him. How things got out of hand and, in a panic, she hid the necklace among Amelia's things. "I didn't know Mom would go through your things," Olivia sobbed. "When I realized what had happened, I was too scared to tell the truth." Amelia felt a mixture of relief and compassion. "Oh, Olivia." Alexander, ever the strategist, saw an opportunity. "Olivia, you understand that what you did was wrong, don't you? But you also understand that by telling the truth now, you can right that wrong and help Amelia." The girl nodded, wiping away her tears. "Yes, I want to do the right thing." Over the next few minutes, Alexander outlined a plan. Olivia agreed to confess everything to her parents and the police, on the condition that Alexander represented her legally to minimize the consequences. When Olivia left, promising to speak to her parents that evening, Amelia turned to Alexander, feeling emotionally exhausted but hopeful. "Do you think this will work?" she asked. Alexander smiled, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I think it will. The truth has a way of coming out, Amelia, And when it does, you'll be free." At that moment, looking into Alexander's eyes, Amelia felt something change inside her. It wasn't just gratitude that she felt for this man who had fought so hard for her. It was something deeper, more complex. "Alexander," she began, her voice trembling, "I don't know how to thank you for all this." He moved a little closer, his eyes fixed on hers. "No need to thank me, Amelia. Doing the right thing, fighting for justice. That's what I live for." For a moment, they stood there, close, the air between them charged with unspoken emotion. It was Alexander who finally broke the silence, sniffling softly. "Well, I think we have a long day ahead of us tomorrow. How about we have dinner and discuss our next steps?" Amelia agreed, feeling simultaneously disappointed and relieved that the moment had been broken. As they walked back to the car, side by side, she couldn't help thinking about how her life had changed in such a short time, and how, amidst the chaos of her legal situation, she seemed to be developing feelings for her lawyer. Dinner at a small Italian restaurant near Alexander's apartment was a mixture of strategic discussion and casual conversation. As the evening progressed, Amelia found herself increasingly charmed not only by Alexander's intelligence and dedication, but also by his sense of humor and compassion. When they finally said goodbye at the door of the guest apartment, there was a tension in the air, an unresolved energy between them. Alexander hesitated for a moment, as if he wanted to say something more, but finally he just smiled and wished her good night. Lying in bed that night, Amelia reflected on the day's events. The hope of clearing her name was stronger than ever, but now it was accompanied by a new complication: her growing feelings for Alexander Callahan. The sun had barely risen when Amelia was awoken by the insistent ringing of her cell phone. Still drowsy, she picked it up to hear Alexander's agitated voice. "Amelia, we need to meet immediately. There's been a twist in the case." 30 minutes later, Amelia entered Alexander's office, cup of strong coffee in hand. She found the lawyer pacing back and forth, his normally impeccable hair slightly disheveled. "What happened?" Amelia asked, concern evident in her voice. Alexander stopped, turning to face her. "Olivia confessed to her parents last night, as promised, but things didn't turn out as we'd hoped." He paused, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "The Whitakers are trying to hush everything up. They don't want Olivia's story to come out. Instead, they're pressuring the prosecutor to pursue charges against you." Amelia felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. But that's unfair. They know it wasn't me." "I know, Amelia. Believe me, I know." Alexander moved closer, putting his hands on her shoulders in a comforting gesture. "But don't worry, I won't let that happen." Their gazes met, and for a moment, Amelia felt lost in the intensity of Alexander's eyes. There was determination there, but also something else, something that made her heart race. Alexander snorted, breaking the moment. "We have to act quickly. I'll set up a meeting with the Whitakers and the prosecutor. We'll confront them with what we know." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Alexander made calls, arranged meetings, and prepared documents. Amelia watched him, impressed by his dedication and skill. By noon, they were on their way to the prosecutor's office. In the car, Alexander turned to Amelia, his face serious. "Amelia, I want you to know, no matter what happens in there, I'm on your side. We'll get through this together." She nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude and something else she couldn't name. "Thank you, Alexander, for everything." The prosecutor's office was tense when they entered. The Whitakers were already there, along with Olivia, who seemed to have been crying recently. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man called Richard Dawson, welcomed them with a nod. "Mr. Callahan, Ms. Cooper, thank you for coming," Dawson began. "I understand we have an interesting development in the case." Alexander immediately took control of the situation. "Interesting is an understatement, Mr. Dawson. We have concrete evidence that my client is innocent and that the real culprit has confessed." Eleanor Whitaker stood up abruptly. "This is absurd. Our daughter was coerced into making this false confession." Mom, please, Olivia interrupted, tears in her eyes. You know it's true. I did it. Amelia is innocent. The room fell into a tense silence. Alexander seized the moment to present the evidence they had collected, the fingerprints on the necklace, the security footage, Olivia's confession. Mr. Whitaker, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. Mr. Dawson, we understand the gravity of the situation, but surely there is a way to resolve this discreetly. Amelia felt a surge of indignation. They were still trying to protect their reputation at her expense. It was at that moment that Alexander surprised everyone. He stood up, his voice calm but charged with emotion. Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker, I understand your desire to protect your daughter, but in doing so, you are perpetuating a terrible injustice against an innocent woman. He paused, looking directly at Amelia before continuing. A woman who has worked tirelessly for you for years, a woman of integrity and compassion. The room fell silent, all eyes on Alexander. Let me be clear, he continued. If you insist on pursuing these false accusations, I will not hesitate to take this case public. Imagine the scandal. A rich and powerful family trying to frame an innocent maid to protect their own reputation. Eleanor Whitaker paled, while her husband looked uncomfortable. Alexander didn't stop. But there is another option. We can resolve this here and now. Drop the charges against Amelia. Take responsibility for the mistakes you've made and work to make amends. It's the right thing to do, not just legally, but morally. The silence that followed was heavy. Amelia looked at Alexander with admiration, feeling her heart fill with something she now recognized as more than gratitude or respect. It was love. Finally, Mr. Whitaker spoke. You're right, Mr. Callahan. We made a terrible mistake. He turned to Amelia. Ms. Cooper, there are no words to express how sorry we are. We will drop all charges immediately. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur for Amelia. Agreements were made, documents signed. When they finally left the office, she felt light, as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. In the parking lot, away from the gazes of others, Amelia turned to Alexander. I don't know how to thank you, she began, her voice laced with emotion. Alexander smiled, that smile that made her heart skip a beat. No need to thank me, Amelia. I did it because... He hesitated, seeming to gather his courage. Because I care about you, very much. The air between them became charged with tension. Amelia stepped forward, reducing the distance between them. Alexander, Before she could finish, Alexander pulled her close, his lips meeting hers in a passionate kiss. It was as if the world around them disappeared. At that moment, there were only the two of them, finally expressing the feelings that had been growing since the beginning. When they broke apart, they were both panting. Alexander leaned his forehead against hers. I'm sorry, he murmured. I should have asked permission. Amelia laughed softly. Don't apologize. I wanted it as much as you did. They stood there, hugging in the parking lot for a few moments, absorbing the reality of what had just happened. Not only was Amelia free of the accusations, but something new and exciting had begun between them. What now? Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander smiled, that smile she had learned to love. Now, I think I deserve to take you out for a proper dinner. What do you think? Amelia nodded, feeling happy and hopeful for the first time in weeks. I think it's a great start. As they walked hand in hand to the car, Amelia reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. What had started out as the worst moment of her life had turned into something beautiful and unexpected. With Alexander by her side, she felt ready to face any challenge the future might bring. The sun was setting over Boston, casting a golden glow over the city. For Amelia and Alexander, it was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, a chapter full of promise and possibility. The lights of Boston twinkled like earthly stars as Amelia and Alexander walked hand in hand through the bustling North End. The aroma of Italian food hung in the air, mixing with the gentle breeze coming from the harbor. It was the perfect setting for their first official date. Alexander guided her to a small, discreet restaurant tucked away down a side street. "I discovered this place years ago," he explained, opening the door for her. "It has the best Italian food in town, but few tourists know about it." The interior was cozy and romantic, with candles flickering on each table and the soft sound of violins in the background. As they settled in, Amelia couldn't help noticing how different Alexander looked outside of the professional environment. Dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, he seemed more relaxed, more approachable. "So," Alexander began, after they had placed their orders, "how do you feel now that it's all over?" Amelia took a deep breath, considering the question. "Honestly, I'm still processing everything. It's like the last few days have been a whirlwind, and I'm only now starting to get my bearings." Alexander nodded understandingly. "It's natural. You've been through a lot in a short time." "But you know," she continued, a smile forming on her lips, "despite everything, I can't help but think that something good has come out of it all." Her eyes met his, filled with meaning. Alexander smiled back, reaching out to touch her hand on the table. "I feel the same way, Amelia. When I met you in that cell, I never imagined we'd be here now." The conversation flowed naturally as they enjoyed the delicious food. They talked about their lives, their hopes and dreams. Amelia told about her childhood in Chicago, about how she came to Boston in search of new opportunities. Alexander shared stories of his early days as a lawyer, of the struggles and victories that shaped him. "You know," Amelia said, playing with the last piece of tiramisu on her plate, "I still don't know what I'm going to do now. Obviously, I can't go back to working for the Whitakers." Alexander leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with an idea. "Actually, I've been thinking about it. How would you feel about working in my office?" Amelia blinked, surprised. "In your office? But I don't have a law degree." "Not as a lawyer," he explained. "But we need someone to manage the office, organize cases, deal with clients. Someone with your organizational skills and empathy would be perfect for the job." Amelia felt a surge of emotion. It was a generous offer, a chance to start again. "Alexander, that's wonderful, but wouldn't it be complicated? I mean, considering our relationship." He smiled, understanding her concern. "I understand your hesitation, but I believe we can keep things professional at work. Besides," he added with a mischievous grin, "I think we make a great team." Amelia laughed, feeling lighter. "That's true. We really do." As they left the restaurant, it was a pleasant evening. They decided to take a walk, enjoying the romantic atmosphere of the city. As they strolled along the harbor shore, Alexander suddenly stopped, turning to Amelia. "You know, there's something I want to tell you," he began, his voice serious. "When I took your case, it was because I believed in your innocence. But along the way, I realized that I was falling in love not just with your cause, but with you." Amelia's heart raced at his words. "Alexander, Wait, let me finish," he said softly. "I know it all happened very quickly, and I understand if you want to take things slowly. But I want you to know that I'm committed to this, to us. It's not just gratitude or the emotion of the moment. It's real." Amelia felt tears forming in her eyes. Wordlessly, she moved closer, enveloping Alexander in a tight hug. When he finally pulled away, she looked into his eyes. "I fell in love with you too, Alexander," she confessed. "And yes, it was quick and unexpected, but I've never felt so sure of anything in my life." They kissed right there at the water's edge, with the city lights reflecting off the rippling surface. It was a kiss full of promise and possibility. Over the next few days, Amelia and Alexander began to navigate their new reality. She took a job in his office, and together they established clear boundaries between the professional and the personal. At work, they were efficient colleagues. Outside of work, they were a couple in love exploring their new relationship. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after dinner, Amelia was organizing some files when she heard a commotion in the reception area. Curious, she went out to see what was going on. To her surprise, she saw Olivia Whitaker standing there, looking nervous and out of place. "Olivia?" Amelia called out, approaching cautiously. "What are you doing here?" The girl turned around, her eyes filling with tears at the sight of Amelia. I came to apologize. Properly this time. Amelia felt a mixture of emotions, compassion, a remnant of hurt, but above all, a desire to heal. She guided Olivia to a private room where they could talk without interruption. Amelia, I'm so sorry, Olivia began as soon as they were seated. What I did to you was horrible and unforgivable. I was scared and acted on impulse, but that's no excuse. Amelia listened in silence as Olivia vented, talking about the pressure she felt, how she had let herself be influenced by the wrong people, and how deeply she regretted her actions. When Olivia had finished, Amelia took a deep breath before speaking. Olivia, what you did hurt me deeply. For a moment, I thought I would lose everything because of a lie. The girl lowered her head in shame, but Amelia continued. However, I also understand that you are young and made a mistake. A serious mistake, yes, but a mistake. The important thing is that you're taking responsibility for your actions and trying to make things right. Olivia looked at Amelia, hope shining in her eyes. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Amelia smiled softly. Forgiveness is a process, Olivia. It doesn't happen overnight, but I'm willing to try, if you're willing to keep doing the right thing. The two talked for a while longer, Amelia offering advice and Olivia listening attentively. When they finally said goodbye, there was a feeling that a page had been turned. That evening, as Amelia recounted the encounter to Alexander over dinner in her apartment, she felt at peace. You know, she said, leaning back in her chair. A few weeks ago, I thought my life was over. And now, look at us. Alexander smiled, reaching out to entwine his fingers with hers. Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it? Amelia nodded, feeling grateful and hopeful. Yes, it does, and I can't wait to see what else it has in store for us. As the evening progressed, Amelia and Alexander remained on the balcony, watching the city lights and dreaming of the future they would build together. A future that, just a few weeks earlier, neither of them could have imagined, but which now seemed brighter than ever. The months flew by like pages of a book in the wind. Amelia and Alexander had fallen into a comfortable routine, balancing their professional life in the office with their blossoming personal relationship. Boston's fall painted the streets in shades of gold and red, reflecting the warm happiness they both felt. However, as in every love story, challenges were about to appear on the horizon. One cold October morning, Amelia arrived at the office to find Alexander in a heated phone call. His expression was tense, his knuckles white as he held the phone. No, it's not acceptable, he said, his voice firm but controlled. My client has rights, and I will ensure that they are respected. When he finally hung up, Alexander let out a heavy sigh. Amelia approached, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Is everything all right? She asked softly. Alexander shook his head, running a hand through his hair in frustration. It's the Morrison case. The prosecution is playing dirty, trying to suppress crucial evidence. The Morrison case was one of the most important the office had picked up since Amelia had started working there. It involved a woman accused of corporate fraud, but Alexander was convinced of her innocence. What can we do? Amelia asked, already in problem-solving mode. Alexander looked at her, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. We're going to have to fight with everything we've got. That means long nights, Amelia. It's going to be hard. She nodded, understanding the implications. Their relationship would be tested by the demands of the case. We're in this together, Alexander. We'll do whatever it takes. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Amelia and Alexander worked tirelessly, often staying in the office until late at night. The case consumed their lives, leaving little time for personal moments. One evening, while reviewing documents for the 1,000th time, Amelia noticed the weariness in Alexander's eyes. Hey, she said softly, how about we take a break? We can order something to eat. Alexander looked at her, a tired smile on his lips. You're amazing. You know that. I don't know what I'd do without you. They ordered Chinese food and settled down on the sofa in Alexander's office. For a moment, they allowed themselves to relax, putting the case aside. "I miss this," Amelia confessed, leaning her head on Alexander's shoulder. "Just the two of us, without piles of papers and deadlines suffocating us." Alexander hugged her tighter. "Me too. I promise that when this case is over, we'll take some time for ourselves. How about a trip?" Amelia smiled at the idea. That would be perfect. However, the case continued to present challenges. The more they investigated, the more complex it became. Alexander was determined to uncover the truth, even if it meant going up against some of the most powerful corporations in Boston. One day, while Amelia was organizing some files, she discovered a discrepancy in some financial documents. It was subtle, but potentially crucial to the case. "Alexander," she called out, running into his office, "I think I've found something." Together, they examined Amelia's discovery. Alexander was impressed by her attention to detail. "This could be the turning point we needed," he said, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Amelia, you're brilliant." In the heat of the moment, they kissed passionately, the adrenaline of discovery mixing with their feelings for each other. But the euphoria was short-lived. As they delved deeper into the investigation, it became clear that they were messing with powerful forces. Alexander began to receive threatening phone calls, warning him to abandon the case. One evening, as Amelia was leaving the office, she noticed a suspicious car parked across the street. A shiver ran down her spine. "Alexander," she said softly, "I think we're being followed." His expression hardened. "I suspected as much. Amelia, maybe you should stay away from the case for a while. I don't want you to put yourself in danger." Amelia felt a twinge of hurt at the suggestion. "No," she said firmly. "We're in this together, remember? I'm not leaving you now." Alexander looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You're amazing. You know that. But promise, you'll be careful." The weeks turned into months. The Morrison case consumed their lives, testing not only their professional skills, but also their relationship. There were moments of tension, heated discussions about legal strategies that sometimes spilled over into the personal. One particularly difficult evening, after a court session that hadn't gone well, Amelia and Alexander had their first serious fight. "You're obsessed with this case, Alexander," Amelia exclaimed, frustration in her voice. "You're risking everything, including us." Alexander turned to her, his eyes tired but determined. "I can't just give up, Amelia. There's too much at stake here." "I know that," she replied, softening a little. "But sometimes I wonder if you remember that there is a life beyond this case, that there is an us." The silence that followed was heavy. Alexander approached her, taking her hands in his. "Amelia," he began, his voice trembling with emotion, "you are the most important thing in my life, more important than any case, any victory in court. I'm sorry if I made you doubt that." Tears formed in Amelia's eyes. "I love you, Alexander. I just want us to find a balance." They embraced, the warmth of each other dispelling the tension of the last few months. In that moment, they reaffirmed their commitment not only to the case, but to their relationship. The turning point in the case came unexpectedly. One evening, while they were working late, they received an anonymous phone call. The voice on the other end of the line offered crucial information that could completely exonerate Alexander's client. In the days that followed, Alexander and Amelia worked tirelessly to verify and corroborate the new information. It was risky, but potentially revolutionary for the case. Finally, the day of the final trial arrived. The courtroom was packed, the tension palpable in the air. Alexander presented the new evidence masterfully, his voice resonating through the room with conviction and passion. Amelia watched from the gallery, her heart pounding. When the verdict was read out, not guilty, the room erupted in commotion. Alexander turned around, his eyes immediately meeting Amelia's. In the midst of the celebration, they shared a moment of silent triumph. Hours later, after the celebrations with the team and the client, Amelia and Alexander were finally alone. They were on the balcony of his apartment, the city of Boston glowing under the night sky. "We did it," Amelia said softly, leaning against Alexander. He hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "No, Amelia, you did it. Without you, without your dedication, your intelligence, your support. None of this would have been possible. Amelia turned in his arms, looking into his eyes. We're a team, remember? In life and at work. Alexander smiled, that smile that still made Amelia's heart skip a beat. A team. I like that. He hesitated for a moment, as if gathering his courage for something. Then, to Amelia's surprise, he got down on one knee. Amelia Cooper, he began, his voice shaking with emotion. These last few months have been the most challenging and also the most rewarding of my life. You make me want to be a better person, a better lawyer. You complete me in a way I never thought possible. He took a small box out of his pocket. Would you do me the honor of marrying me? Amelia felt tears of happiness forming in her eyes. Without hesitation, she answered, Yes, Alexander, 1,000 times yes. As he slid the ring onto her finger, Amelia thought about the whole journey that had brought them there. From an unjust accusation to a deep and true love. Life did indeed have surprising ways of unfolding. There, under the Boston stars, Amelia and Alexander sealed their commitment with a kiss, ready to face any challenge the future might bring. Together. The news of Amelia and Alexander's engagement spread quickly through the office and Boston's social circle. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of congratulations, initial wedding plans, and, of course, continuous work at the law firm. One sunny spring morning, Amelia arrived at the office to find Alexander in a lively telephone conversation. His eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, a broad smile on his face. Yes, I see. It's an incredible opportunity, he said. Let me discuss it with my fiancée, and I'll get back to you with our decision. Thanks again. When he hung up, Alexander turned to Amelia, almost bursting with excitement. Baby, you won't believe what just happened, he began, getting up to hug her. Remember that pro bono case we took last month? The one about the immigrant community facing unfair evictions? Amelia nodded. It had been a moving case they had taken on, defending families who were about to lose their homes due to the predatory practices of a large real estate conglomerate. Well, Alexander continued, apparently our work has caught the attention of an international human rights NGO. They're expanding their operations and want to open an office here in Boston. And guess what? They want me to lead the project. Amelia felt a surge of pride and happiness for her fiancé. Alexander, this is incredible. It's exactly the kind of work you've always wanted to do. Alexander's smile faltered a little. There's just one thing. The job would require some international travel, maybe even extended periods abroad. Amelia felt a tightness in her chest. The idea of being separated from Alexander for long periods was challenging, especially with the wedding approaching, but she knew how much this opportunity meant to him. We'll manage, she said, determined. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I can't let you refuse it because of me. Alexander hugged her tightly. You're amazing, you know that. But I don't want to make any decisions without talking about it properly. How about we have dinner tonight and discuss all the details? That evening, sitting on the balcony of Alexander's apartment with a bottle of wine and a view of the city, they talked about the future. Alexander explained more about the job, the challenges they would face, and the incredible opportunities that lay ahead. You know, Amelia said, swirling the glass of wine in her hands, I've been thinking a lot about my own career, too. Alexander leaned in, interested. What do you mean? Well, working with you in the office has been incredible. I've learned so much about law and justice, and it's made me realize, maybe I want to follow that path, too. Alexander's eyes widened in surprise and delight. You're thinking of going to law school? Amelia nodded, a shy smile on her lips. I've been researching evening programs. I could keep working during the day and study at night. What do you think? Alexander took her hands, his eyes shining with pride. I think you'd be an incredible lawyer, Amelia. Your empathy, your intelligence, your determination, you have everything it takes. They spent the rest of the evening discussing their future plans, how they could make it work with Alexander's new job and Amelia's studies. It wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to support each other's dreams. The following weeks were a roller coaster of emotions and activities. Alexander accepted the job with the NGO, and together they worked to reorganize the office. Amelia took on more responsibilities, preparing for the periods when Alexander would be traveling. One particularly hectic afternoon, while they were organizing files and making plans, Amelia found an old photo hidden in a drawer. It was of her and Alexander, taken on the day she was released on trumped-up charges. "Look at this," she said, showing the photo to Alexander. "It looks like a lifetime ago." Alexander approached, a nostalgic smile on his face. Who knew that terrible day would lead to all this? Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder. "It's amazing how life turns around, isn't it? That day, I thought it was all over, and now we're about to start a new adventure together," Alexander added, kissing the top of her head. The big day had finally arrived. Alexander's first international trip with the NGO. They were at Logan Airport, Amelia holding his hand tightly as they waited for the boarding announcement. "I promise I'll call you every day," Alexander said, his voice laced with emotion, "and I'll be back before you know it." Amelia smiled through the tears that threatened to fall. "I'll miss you, but I'm so proud of you. You're going to do an amazing job out there." When the flight announcement sounded, they hugged each other tightly. "I love you," they whispered to each other. Amelia watched Alexander pass through the boarding gate, her heart heavy but full of hope. As she walked back to her car, she took out of her pocket the law school acceptance letter she had received the week before. A smile formed on her lips. It was the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. In the weeks that followed, Amelia immersed herself in her work at the office and in preparing to start law school. Evenings were filled with calls to Alexander, sharing the news of the day and making plans for the future. A month after Alexander's departure, Amelia received an unexpected call. It was Olivia Whitaker. "Amelia, it's Olivia. I need your help." The young woman's voice sounded shaky and frightened. Amelia felt a twinge of concern. "Olivia? What happened?" "It's complicated," Olivia replied. "Can I find you? Please?" Amelia agreed without hesitation. Despite everything that had happened in the past, she couldn't ignore someone in need. They met in a quiet cafe. Olivia looked nervous, her eyes red from crying. "I'm in trouble, Amelia," she began. "I've done something stupid, again, and I don't know where else to turn." As Olivia vented, telling her about a university fraud scheme she had been involved in, Amelia listened intently. Part of her wanted to judge, to remind Olivia of her past mistakes. But a stronger voice in her mind, a voice that sounded eerily like Alexander, reminded her of the importance of compassion and second chances. "Olivia," Amelia finally said, "what you did was wrong. But the fact that you're here, seeking help, shows that you want to do the right thing. Let's work together to sort it out." In the days that followed, Amelia used everything she had learned from Alexander and in her preparations for law school to help Olivia. Together, they prepared a confession, sought legal advice, and mapped out a plan for Olivia to redeem herself. One night, while working on Olivia's case, Amelia received a video call from Alexander. "Hey, love," he smiled, his tired but happy face on the screen. "How are things going over there?" Amelia hesitated for a moment before telling him about Olivia. To her surprise, Alexander wasn't shocked or disappointed. On the contrary, his face lit up with pride. "Amelia," he said, his voice full of emotion, "this is exactly why I fell in love with you. Your ability to forgive, to see the best in people, it's inspiring." At that moment, looking at her fiancé's face on the screen and thinking about the whole journey that had brought them there, Amelia felt a wave of gratitude and love. Despite the physical distance, she had never felt so connected to Alexander. "I'm so proud of you," Alexander continued. "Helping Olivia, preparing for law school. You're blossoming, Amelia, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." As they talked, making plans for Alexander's return and the start of Amelia's classes, the sun was setting over Boston. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, full of promise, challenges, and, above all, love. Amelia knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be late nights studying, challenging cases, and periods of separation, but with Alexander by her side, even if sometimes only in spirit, she felt ready to face anything. Together, they were writing a story of love, justice, and redemption. A story that, Amelia was sure, was only just beginning. The sun was rising over the Boston skyline, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Amelia stood on the balcony of her apartment, a hot cup of coffee in her hands, watching the city awaken. 5 years had passed since the night Alexander proposed marriage, and their world had changed in ways she could never have imagined. The sound of soft footsteps behind her made her smile. Strong arms wrapped around her, and she leaned back against Alexander's chest. "Good morning, Dr. Cooper Callahan," he murmured, kissing her cheek. "Ready for the big day?" Amelia turned in his arms, looking into the eyes of the man who had been her rock, her partner, and her greatest supporter over the last few years. "As ready as I can be," she replied with a nervous smile. Today was the day that Amelia would defend her first major case as a trained lawyer. After years of studying at night, balancing work, family, and education, she had finally graduated from law school and passed the bar exam. And now, in a twist of fate, her first major case was defending the rights of immigrant workers against a large corporation. The kind of case that had inspired Alexander to join the human rights NGO years ago. "You're going to kick ass," Alexander said, his voice full of pride. "Remember everything you've learned. Trust your instincts and, above all, speak from the heart. That's what makes you an incredible lawyer." Amelia nodded, feeling strengthened by her husband's support. The last few years hadn't been easy. There had been times when she had almost given up. Endless nights studying, the pressure of balancing work at the office with classes, and the long periods when Alexander was abroad working on international cases. But they had overcome it all together. As they prepared to leave, Amelia stopped to look at a framed photo on the wall. It was from their wedding day, 3 years ago. It had been an intimate ceremony, with only their closest friends and family. Olivia was there, smiling shyly in the photo, living proof of redemption and second beginnings. "Thinking about the journey that brought us here?" Alexander asked, noticing her pensive look. Amelia smiled. "Yes. It's amazing to think that it all started with an unjust accusation. Who knew that that terrible moment would lead me to the love of my life and a career that I love?" Alexander pulled her close, kissing her softly. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, but I wouldn't trade any of this for anything in the world." At the courthouse, Amelia felt a wave of nervousness at the sight of the crowded courtroom. Her clients, immigrant families fighting for fair working conditions, were sitting in the front rows, their faces a mixture of hope and apprehension. When the judge entered and the session opened, Amelia stood up, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. But then she saw Alexander in the gallery, giving her an encouraging smile, and all her preparation and passion came to the fore. "Your Honor," she began, her voice firm and clear, "we are here today not only to discuss laws and regulations, but to talk about human dignity, justice, and the true meaning of the American dream." The next few hours passed in a blur of arguments, counter-arguments, and moving testimony. Amelia presented her case with eloquence and passion, using every lesson she had learned over the years, every insight she had gained from her own experiences of injustice and redemption. When the judge finally gave his verdict in favor of the immigrant workers, the room erupted in applause. Amelia felt tears of joy and relief in her eyes as she was embraced by her grateful clients. Alexander made his way through the crowd, his face beaming with pride. "You were amazing, love," he said, hugging her tightly. "Absolutely incredible." Later that evening, they celebrated with a small gathering in her apartment. Friends, colleagues, and even some of his clients joined in to celebrate the victory. In a quiet moment, Amelia found herself talking to Olivia, who was now a young woman working in social work. "You know, Amelia," Olivia said, her voice full of emotion, "I've never thanked you properly. Not just for helping me that day years ago, but for being an example of how one person can overcome adversity and make a difference in the world." Amelia felt her heart fill with emotion. "Olivia, seeing you transform your life is gratification enough. I'm so proud of the woman you've become." As the evening progressed, Amelia and Alexander found a quiet moment on the balcony, watching the city lights. "So, Dr. Cooper Callahan," Alexander said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "What's next? Conquering the legal world? Perhaps join me at the International NGO?" Amelia smiled, leaning over to kiss him softly. "Actually," she said, her voice low and full of emotion, "I was thinking that maybe it's time we started our own family." Alexander's eyes widened in surprise and then filled with tears of joy. "You mean—" Amelia nodded, placing his hand on her belly. "Surprise, Daddy." Alexander hugged her tightly, laughing and crying at the same time. As they rocked gently under the starry Boston sky, Amelia reflected on the incredible journey life had given her. From a wrongly accused maid to a successful lawyer, beloved wife and mother-to-be, she had faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and discovered an inner strength she never knew she possessed. And by her side, every step of the way, was Alexander, her love, her partner, her safe haven. As they looked out over the Boston skyline, the city that had been the setting for their story of love and redemption, Amelia felt a deep sense of gratitude and hope. The future was full of possibilities, new challenges and adventures, but with Alexander by her side and love as her compass, she knew she could face whatever life had in store for them. "I love you," Alexander whispered, his hand still resting protectively on her belly. "I love you too," Amelia replied, her voice full of promise for the future. And there, under the Boston stars, with the distant sound of the city in the background and the warmth of each other's embrace, Amelia and Alexander began the next chapter of their journey together. A journey that had begun with an unjust accusation and was now unfolding into a life of love, justice, and hope. A story that, they knew, was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was only just beginning.